Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me once again Jesse James Aradia. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. And yeah, so last time we were talking a bit about herbs, and so what have you been up to since then?
Um, Same stuff.
Same stuff.
Magic, working a lot, soaking in the sun, so it's getting really nice here now.
Yeah,
Jogging, working out, everything.
great, great. So let's go ahead and get into it by talking about cursing with herbs. Now, what's your philosophy on cursing with herbs?
Um, to me, actually, the word cursing, I like to call it another word. To me, cursing is just another form, in my opinion, that the church has made. It's given a negative tone to. So I like to call it protection, um, protecting ourselves against people or things that we know are drawing negative or being against us. So
Mhm.
it's a form of praying. It's different. I just, yeah, I cursing to me is, I just like to call it giving back, or praying in a different way.
Okay. All right. Now, do you use certain herbs, like let's say certain kind of chilies, or Jezebel root, or even devil's claw, or anything like that?
Devil's Claw is yeah, that's a famous one. I have that. It's good because it's to repel or attract. And it's used a lot for unwanted visitors. So you can even put it in front of the home. But I use a lot of herbs. There's so many to remember, and a lot of oils for, okay, let's say cursing
Hmm.
right now. Make
Right.
it simple. Yes.
Right. Okay. So let's say if you wanted to make somebody sick, you use something like Balmony, or let's say if you wanted to bind someone, you use something any kind of a binding weed. There's bindweed. Um,
Yes.
Jezebel root for female domination, man, that type of thing. What are some common herbs that you use for um, cursing?
Okay, without giving all my secrets away.
Right.
um, Now you're talking essential oils or plants, like the
Plants.
actual dry
Plants.
plants.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I like to use the devil's claw, as we mentioned. Vervain is a
Okay.
very powerful one. Goat's rue, which wards off any evil lie or evil that has been done to you. It also increases your psychic abilities. Saffron, red clover, very powerful one. So, deadly nightshade, which is also known as belladonna. So, for me, everybody has their way of doing magic. And as I stated in the first video, I like to do things a little different. So, a lot of people will use kind of the herbs that they associate negativity with, but you can also use positive herbs for hexing, because what you do is, so for instance, if you have red clover, which is for fertility, family, attract love, money, and things like that, you can also use it, but mimic something like a poppy you have near you to also use it in a negative way. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
You can use herbs that are done positively and turn that around and use it also for negative purpose. It's your intent and what you're mimicking and what you're thinking of that actually makes it more powerful to use those herbs against what it's actually made for.
Mm. That's a good point made, because a lot of people discussing this subject don't mention that. They'll just say,
Right.
well, you can use these herbs, but they don't say, well, you can flip the script with this.
Absolutely. And I think that I have found that to be much more powerful. So it depends how tribal you're getting in a spell, how much of a trance you're in. Um, you may look you may look different doing it, but you can actually start mimicking this herb in front of you and vision the person. So if, instead of attracting love and money, you're taking it away, which
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, I find that to be powerful. Whereas most people just say, oh, black candles, yes, I'm going to use it to hex or curse. Well, why not use a white one? And like you said, flip the script, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Imagination and intent is key.
Absolutely. It doesn't work without the two. So
Mm-hmm.
your
I
intent
agree.
is the strongest thing in the spell.
Mm-hmm. Um, Now let's talk a bit about storing herbs. Now, as
About
far as
what?
storing, storing herbs, like
Oh, storing. Yes, yes.
right now, some people will take some plants and maybe wrap them in a paper towel, put them in a plastic bag, make sure the air's out. Do you do anything similar to that?
Yes. You have to absolutely, before storing them in a container, you have to make sure that they are absolutely dry or they will mold. So once they're completely dry, you can store them in a just a regular, preferably a glass container, not plastic, and a dark, warm, or cool place away from water and stuff like that. So you don't want to really store them. You can store them in your fridge, but I mean, I have them on the counter. I've had them there for years.
Hmm. Okay. Um, what are some ways of storing that you maybe see or hear of people doing that may not be the best way, or would stuff ways that would be much more easier?
I think the easiest way described is what I had said. Kind
Hmm.
of getting it, making sure it's dried, unless you're doing something like death oil. That has a lot of liquids in the jar, so you have to make sure that your jar is sanitized, sealed properly.
Hmm.
So if it's dry herbs, I mean, there's no problem, but anything liquid, you definitely want to sterilize and make sure everything in there is clean before you put any of your intention in the jar.
Okay. Now let's get into natural medicine. Um, what would you say are some plants that people can use for, let's say, common medications or stuff that may be deadly, or as you say, well, this plant would be much easier to use rather than getting medication.
Okay, well, starting off with anything natural, most people think because it's natural, it's good for me, so I'm going to pop it like candy. That is not the case. Especially if a woman is pregnant, you have to stay away from a lot. Google your product. Any certain medications that you are taking, you have to be really careful. Again, just because it's natural, it doesn't mean it's going to do you good. It may harm you in effect. So some herbs that I would probably use is white willow is a perfect example
Mm,
for natural medicine, but white willow, you have to be really careful because if you're on certain thinners or aspirin, it
mm,
can actually do a lot of damage.
mm.
I mean, all of my herbs and teas, but there's so much to remember what the side effects and what they're good for. But I normally go to them if I have a headache or any sort of pain. I don't use any kind of modern medicine at all, right?
Mhm. You had mentioned about handling them the wrong way and potentially harming you. Going back to the subject of hexing, like if you're using some herbs that may be dangerous, um, it may be good to use gloves when handling them.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yes. 100%. Yes.
Mhm.
And if you're using something like belladonna, which is the deadly nightshade,
Yeah.
like a lot of this stuff is poisonous. So you do want to use gloves and you want to make sure you're not injecting too much or taking, just be careful with stuff. I mean, again, it's just because it's natural, it doesn't mean it's gonna not backfire.
Yeah. And I will say that before using any herb, you really want to do your homework on it. You want to know about its origin, you want to know about, you know, any side effects, anything
Yes,
so that you can keep yourself completely safe. Because if you take too much of it, or even some people make the mistake of heating them. So let's say you
right.
try heating them on the stove. Well, some of them, if you heat them too much, it may release poisonous gas.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes. Saffron, the herb saffron is actually used for kidney and liver disorders. And another thing that people have to understand about natural medicine, I find that everybody wants a quick fix. Well, when the doctor gives you something, even that is not a quick fix. So, with most herbs and natural medicine, give it 2 to 3 months to actually see any kind of difference, to feel better. Um, so yeah, the saffron one is used for kidney, like I said, disorders, but you have to be careful how much you're taking every day.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So many people make the mistake of mishandling them, either taking too much or, again, not using gloves,
Right,
heating poisonous plants, and then inhaling that,
exactly.
and then
The
either
next thing
killing
you know,
themselves or harming themselves. I mean, you can, if
next
you
thing you
don't
know,
know
you're
what you're
flat
doing.
on your ass.
What's that?
Next thing you know, you're flat on your ass in the
Yeah,
kitchen.
exactly. Um, so I mean, it working with plants and doing herbal magic is something you really want to do your homework with.
100%.
Everybody.
Especially, yeah, especially essential oils like these things here. These things are actually more potent than the plants. These go into your skin system in a matter of seconds. So again, you can't put them on like as if it was suntan lotion. Like 1 or 2 drops is sufficient.
Mhm. And let's get into now plants as talismans. Now, for those who may not be familiar with that, go ahead and explain that process.
I don't make that stuff. If I need to, I would normally buy something.
Mm,
But like I said, any plant can be put into a necklace, into an object with your intent, what you want to put out there. I see a lot of people carrying necklaces or rings that could have plants right in there. So if you want to use like a witch's salt for protection, or you want to put the red clover in there for other reasons. I'm
mm.
not I don't do the necklaces, but I have seen them, which they're
Okay.
really nice looking. Yeah.
Now, concerning using plants as talismans or herbal magic, do you tend to at times tie that in with planetary magic?
Yeah. Um, as I said, I don't really, when I do the magic with herbs, I
Yeah.
don't use the talisman. I just use it on a dish in a specific way doing my spell.
Mm,
So that is the way that I go about things. Or
hmm
I could, put them in the cauldron, have them boiled.
hmm Okay. Now let's talk about candle magic with oil and with herbs. What would you say are some mistakes that people tend to make with that process?
With a candle, you can put any kind of essential oil on there, not too much. You can even dress it, write a name down, put all kind of herbs that you want on the candle. The only mistake that I think and I've heard people do is when they're doing their spell, they're not really watching what is burning. Because if you're not careful, that stuff could start a house fire. So you don't want to use too much of the oils or the herbs around your candle for
Right.
that specific reason. And you have to be careful also what you're mixing together, because sometimes one oil may not mix well with another oil. And as you said, it could be poisonous, and the smell, just the toxins also. You don't want to start putting oils and herbs together that you're unaware of what the two are basically, how they're going to work together.
Mm. Again, like we said earlier, do your homework
Right.
on every plant.
Every plant, yes.
Mhm. Now, what would you say about dandelion?
Dandelion root is a very good healing product. It can be used for headache, pain, arthritis. You can actually drink it for stomach ache, ulcers, all kinds of stuff. I actually had a friend of mine post dandelion root on one of my groups on Facebook.
Mhm.
We did a whole
Yeah,
thing on it.
the thing about dandelions is they're so common, people just don't think just to pick them up and use them.
Actually, you can also use dandelions. I totally forgot about this. My mom used to make a certain like fried pastry. So you can actually use dandelion for food and cakes and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were delicious, absolutely delicious.
I'll have to check that out. Um, there was an
Just
incident. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. Just be careful. Read your stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you know your stuff before you get into it. Um, Now, I was going through your Facebook group and there was a post about a moth. Can you explain that?
Okay, so about 4 or 5 days ago, my neighbor, which I absolutely love, he knocks on my door and he goes, "Look at this." So he shows me this little thing in his hand. Now he was convinced it was a bat. I said, "Well, where did you get it?" He goes, "I got it from the backyard. I think, you know, mother left it or whatever." I says, "Well, go put it back." But I got to be honest, in my head, I'm thinking, I want this thing if it's a bat, because I'm going to do a lot of magic with this thing.
Right.
So we posted it on Facebook and we got some rude comments saying it's not a bat, it's a moth. Now, the interesting thing I almost forgot to mention is even though it was a moth, the couple people that were rude, I totally blocked them. It's like you don't have to educate us in a snarly way, right?
Mm,
So we went ahead and then I did a correction about 2 days ago. He calls me up. He goes, "Some people were right. It ended up being, are you ready for this? Not just a moth, a black witch moth."
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had reposted that and I said, you know what? That figures that you're surrounded by witches. It figures that that's what you end up finding. So that's what it actually was. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool. So I'm going to try to
Now,
take it off of them.
now, a lot of people, modern day tend to use apps as far as, identifying plants, finding plants. You don't use any apps. You're old
No.
school, you just use books.
Books and knowledge from people that I have studied with. The
Hmm.
thing with Google and apps, I'm a firm believer. I'm sorry, Google does not always give you the right information. For me, and this is including Facebook, you got to remember it's political. They can only post so much, and sometimes they're biased depending on what they're selling or what group that they want to support. So I don't always trust Google. So I go to all my ancient books for any kind of information on herbs. Absolutely.
I would say books are good. Maybe trial and error experience is the best teacher.
Right. Yeah.
So That's important to remember in the digital age. But now, as far as taking advantage of the weather when doing spells and doing herbal spells, you tend to do that. Like take, for instance, stormy weather, right?
Yes, I think I mentioned in my first video, I love thunder. I
Mm,
love the stormy weather when I'm doing a spell, but I'm not subject to just wait till it thunders or wait till it rains. I'll
mm,
do it in the sunshine, I'll do it in the snow, like just whatever mood or whatever I have to do for that day, it's
mm.
going to be done, you know?
Right. And that's important for everybody to consider, not get too caught up in, well, I'm gonna have to wait for this moon phase or this planet
Right,
goes into alignment or
right.
whatever. If you need something done, it can get done. I
Because
mean, if
you're,
you want to,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, if you want to take advantage of those, of those times, to give you an extra kick, you can. But if you need something done right away, you can just get it done
Yeah.
with your intent. So,
Your intent is the number 100% main factor behind any spell. Um, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's like you said, you can't wait for a full moon, a waning moon, a dark moon. Sometimes you're pissed off, or sometimes you feel it. And those are the best times to act upon it. Like if
mm,
it's 9 o'clock in the morning, there's no moon now, just the sun. I'm doing it. I'm doing a spell.
mm.
That's when I feel the most inspired, or somebody's pissed me off and you feel like giving that extra kick to them, you got all that energy. It needs to go somewhere.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Now, as we mentioned before, you have a Facebook group called Spells, Spirituality, and Potions. I encourage everybody to, if you have Facebook, find that group, join it. Link will be
Thank you.
below in the video description. Um, Jesse goes in and, sometimes she'll talk about different herbs, maybe different mixtures and ways of doing her magic. And it's very educational.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
Also, you can check her out on Instagram. Her Instagram link will be below in the video description. And you're also working on a website.
Yes, I'm working on my own Shopify website. That's in the making, so I haven't been too busy with the Spells Spirituality group. I'm
Mm,
very excited about that because it's going to be different. I'm going to sell stuff on there, um, just targeted for individuals like us who practice what we practice. So it's going to have a lot of dark and light magic products.
mm.
Um, there's going to be tarot card readings on there. There's going to be jewelry, lots of stuff. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that as well. When you launch that, let me know, and I'll bring you back on so that we
Absolutely.
can talk about that. So, everybody who is watching, check for those links below. Thank you again for coming on to the
You're
channel.
welcome anytime.
Thank you for your time, and everybody who's watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.